It was the night of April 10th, 1912.
A cold wind swept across the silent dock at Southampton, England. The stars blinked softly in the sky, as if whispering a warning. Towering above the fog and crowd was a marvel of human ambition, the RMS Titanic, a ship so grand, so majestic, that newspapers boldly called it unsinkable. With a length of 882 feet, more than 53 meters tall, and weighing over 46,000 tons, Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a floating palace. Marble staircases, golden chandeliers, Turkish baths, smoking lounges, a gym, a squash court. No luxury was spared. It was the crown jewel of modern engineering. And yet, this silent night knew what the world did not. At 12 p.m., April 10, Titanic departed on her maiden voyage from Southampton, bound for New York City. On board were over 2,200 passengers, wealthy elites, hopeful immigrants, children, mothers, lovers, all dreaming of new lives. At the helm was Captain Edward John Smith, a veteran sailor on his final voyage before retirement. The Atlantic Ocean looked calm, deceptively calm. On April 12, 2 days into the journey, the ship received its first iceberg warning. It was a routine message. Other ships communicated via Morse code, alerting one another about floating ice in the North Atlantic. Titanic slightly altered her course, but not her speed. She continued at 21.5 knots, almost 40 kilometers per hour. Fast, too fast. The next day, April 13, the warnings increased, and yet nothing changed. Titanic glided forward like a sleeping giant. Her passengers danced to violins and dined under candlelight, unaware that nature had already begun writing a tragedy in the shadows. April 14, 1912, a night of haunting silence. There was no moon in the sky, no waves in the sea, just an eerie calm. The temperature dropped below freezing, and at 11:39 p.m., a lookout named Frederick Fleet spotted something ahead from the crow's nest. A ghost, a giant, an iceberg. He rang the bell 3 times and phoned the bridge. "Iceberg, right ahead." At 11:40 p.m., First Officer William Murdoch ordered a sharp left turn and engines reversed, but the response came too late. In just 1 minute, the mighty Titanic scraped the iceberg along her starboard side. 10 seconds. That's all it took. 10 seconds to doom a ship once called unsinkable. The iceberg was massive, over 400 feet long, towering nearly as high as the ship's decks. It was like colliding with a frozen mountain. The ship's hull tore open along 5 of her watertight compartments. Only 4 could flood without sinking the ship. 5 was fatal. By 11:50 p.m., seawater rushed in like a monster awakened. The double-bottom hull Titanic boasted, useless on the sides. Within minutes, the bow of the ship began dipping. 12 a.m. Miles away, the RMS Carpathia picked up the call. The crew turned course, full steam ahead, but they were 107 kilometers away. It would take them over 3 hours to arrive. Would Titanic survive that long? 12:20 a.m. Flares were fired into the air, bright rockets bursting in the sky. In the distance, a ship was seen, the Californian, just 10 miles away. They saw the lights, they saw the flares, but did nothing. Their radio had been switched off for the night. The captain dismissed the signals. He thought the passengers were celebrating. By the time they learned the truth, it was too late. 12:45 a.m. The first lifeboat was lowered. It had space for 65 people. Only 28 boarded. Why? Because no one believed the ship was actually sinking. But by 1:20 a.m., reality became impossible to ignore. Water was crawling up the staircases. Panic set in. Lifeboats were rushed. Some were lowered half empty. Others were overcrowded. Women and children first, that was the order. But chaos doesn't follow rules. There were only 20 lifeboats on board, enough for just 1,200 people. Over 2,200 were aboard. The math was brutal. 2 a.m. The bow had fully submerged. The stern now pointed toward the stars. The ship groaned and twisted like a wounded beast. Eyewitnesses said it was like watching a cathedral breaking in half. 2:18 a.m. Titanic split. 2 massive halves crashing into the sea. Screams echoed through the icy night. 2:20 a.m. The unsinkable sank. Within minutes, the freezing -2°C water claimed over 1,500 lives. Not by drowning, but by hypothermia. Even strong swimmers couldn't survive more than 15 minutes in that deadly cold. Captain Smith went down with his ship. Some say he drowned silently at the wheel. Others say he took his own life. No one knows for sure. By 4 a.m., Carpathia arrived, but it was too late. All that remained were 705 survivors and a sea of lifeless bodies, floating like ghosts in the dawn. And the iceberg? It sailed on, silent, unmoved, victorious. In the days and years that followed the world's search for answers, there were inquiries, accusations, and shame. Why was Titanic sailing so fast despite repeated warnings? Why didn't the crew conduct a safety drill? Why weren't there enough lifeboats? Why did the Californian ignore the distress signals? And most chilling of all, did human pride kill Titanic? There's a theory that Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the White Star Line, pressured the captain to maintain full speed, to reach New York ahead of time, to break a record, to prove a point. When the captain showed him the iceberg warnings at 2 p.m. on April 14, Ismay is said to have pocketed the note. No one must panic. Speed was more important than safety. That night, the stars watched silently as a monument to arrogance. In 1985, Titanic's wreck was finally discovered, 3,800 meters beneath the sea. The ship lay torn in two, slowly being eaten by rust and time. Scientists believe that by 2030, the wreck may vanish entirely, but her story will remain. Because Titanic was more than a ship. She was a symbol of beauty, of ambition, of pride. And pride sank her, never pride. The Titanic teaches us that no matter how mighty our creations, nature always has the final word. Humility is not weakness, it is survival. Because it wasn't just an iceberg.